to the Moon and You webinar. Thank you so very much for joining me and for taking the time out of your busy schedules to take a part of this webinar. So in this little video training, we're going to explore the 4 main lunar phases and learn how they affect our energy levels, our lifestyle, and our yoga practice. Now, in reality, there are 8 lunar phases or 8 phases of the moon, but I like to focus mainly on the 4 primary ones. I think that's an easier way, an easier entry point for people to really be able to grasp, understand, and implement these concepts and everything that we're going to be talking about today. But just keep in mind, just for your own learning and your own knowledge, that there are actually 8 phases of the moon. But for our sake and for the context of this and the way that I normally work with the lunar phases, I like to focus on the main 4, which are the new moon, first quarter moon, full moon, and third quarter moon. So before we get started, please grab your Moon and You workbook. You should have been emailed this workbook so you can print it out. If you don't have one, if you weren't able to print it, it really doesn't matter. Just maybe grab a pen and paper or a journal, or just fire up your laptop so that you can take some notes, because we are absolutely going to be covering a lot of material today. This is pretty much all of the knowledge that I have in this little brain of mine that I'm just giving out to you guys, trying to keep it in as condensed a format as possible, because I don't want to keep you here all night. We're going to try to keep it really concise. Definitely, I'm hoping for like under an hour or so, but we do have a lot of information. So have your tools so that you can make some notes. So you might ask yourself, why should I care about the moon phases, and why would I go through the trouble of trying to sync up my life with the moon cycles? It is a very valid question. It's definitely a question that I had at first years ago. I knew nothing about any of this, and I didn't really understand why some people cared and why some people did choose to align their lifestyle and their yoga practice according to the moon phases. So there are a few different answers that I can give you, but I think the best one is for me to just share personally in my own experience why I found this to be so beneficial. So over the past couple of years, I would say maybe 3 or 4 years, I've been on a journey to try to connect more to the divine feminine energy within me. I've also been trying to deepen my spiritual practices, and overall, I've been trying to feel healthier and really improve my well-being on physical, mental, and emotional level. So I found that the best way to do all of that is to connect to nature's rhythms, because as it turns out, nature's rhythms are our own rhythms. They are intimately tied. So when we think, especially in our culture, I feel like when we think of nature, we think of something that is outside, something that is external to us, right? We look out of the window to look at nature, but the truth is we are nature. We are a part of nature. We are built from the same stuff. We are the same stuff. Nature is not something that is separate and apart from us. We are intimately connected and tied. Nature is interwoven in the very fabric of our DNA. It is a part of us. So I believe that true health is achieved when our bodies and lifestyle mirror what is happening in nature, which is why I strive to structure my yoga practice and just my life in general according to nature's rhythms, whether that be the changing of the seasons or the changing of the moon phases. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. So please just take these teachings with a grain of salt. I'm going to give you a ton of information. Not everything I give you is necessarily needed to be implemented. You don't have to do everything that I tell you tonight. It's going to be a lot of info. Take what works for you, take what feels intuitive, what feels true, what feels like it would benefit you in the long run, and just leave the rest. Even for me, I have to say, I don't do all of this 100% perfectly. However, every single time in my life that I felt stressed out, ungrounded, unclear of what to do next, if my health starts to decline in any way, I'm getting sick, my energy levels are not where they should be, time and time again, I always come back to connecting with nature's own rhythms, and I always come back to the lunar cycles, and pretty much so far, knock on wood, I don't have any wood, but pretty much so far, it's always worked to help me feel grounded, focused, I feel healthier, and I feel better overall. So for me, this has worked really well. For you, you might find that other things work best. It's just important to do what works best for you in the long run. Okay, so there are 4 main lunar phases that we are going to look at today. The first one is the new moon. Now, the new moon is the beginning of everything. Everything begins in the dark. So the new moon is when you look up in the sky and there's no sunlight being reflected on the moon. So it is totally dark. You usually can't see the moon at all in those nights. So these are the nights of the month that are the darkest for sure, because we don't have the moon rays and the moon beams to light up the outdoors. So the new moon is the beginning. And if you think of ourselves just as humans, our conception happens in the darkness of the womb. This is the beginning of everything, of all life. And the new moon is a powerful reset button. It's a beautiful gift that we get every single month to hit the reset button, start everything anew, begin a brand new page and a brand new chapter of the book of our lives. And the power of the new moon lies in its darkness, lies in the death-like energy that it contains. And in our society, these words like darkness and death are not really embraced and honored. We tend to favor the light and the joy and life, which of course is wonderful and beautiful, and we're going to look at those later on. But darkness and death really have an important role to play in our lives and in our well-being. So the theme of the new moon, if you're following along with your notebook, you'll see that the first little line that you have to fill out is the theme. The theme of the new moon is a new beginning. This is the energetic quality of this time of the month. So every month, I should have started by saying this, every month we pretty much, there are a few exceptions, but usually we get, one new moon every month, a first quarter. A week later is a full moon, and then a week later after that is a third quarter moon, and then it circles right back to the new moon. So for a period of 3 days or so, we linger around the new moon period, and this is all about the new beginnings. So when you think of words that are associated with the new moon, you want to think of words like dreaming, rest, self-care, visualizing, and withdrawing, also planting seeds and reset buttons. So just like the little embryo in the womb is implanted in the darkness, this little embryo is full of potential. And ourselves, like little seeds every new moon, we are also full of potential. This is our death before the rebirth. And this time of the month is a gift to us because it allows us to really tune everyone else out, start to turn into ourselves and get really clear on what it is that we want for the future, for our lives, and really getting clear on what it is that we need. Flowers are not meant to bloom and blossom year-round. So if you think of just a flower, it begins in the depth, the deep, dark soil, the little seed in the ground, which would represent the new moon. And then it starts to blossom and bud in the springtime or in the first quarter moon. And then it blooms into a big, beautiful flower that can symbolize the full moon or symbolize summer. But then it dies once more and the cycle begins anew. So we are not meant to be blossoming year-round. Yet in our Western societies, we are usually very much pressured to always be blossoming. We are pressured to always be productive, always be producing, always be busy, always be happy and vibrant and alive. And that's just not sustainable. People are burning out all over the place because they are not taking the time every month to just tune out, chill out, sleep more, eat more, go out less, do less, just stay indoors and connect to ourselves intuitively. So this is where the health and the well-being comes from. Most people know how to be active. They know how to be social. They know how to play and celebrate. They don't know how to slow down. They don't know how to take care of themselves. So the new moon is this opportunity that we have every single month to tune everyone else out and tune into ourselves. This is a time where you want to set intentions for the following couple of weeks, following months, following years. This is the most powerful time to dream, visualize, and take care of yourself. So the new moon, usually our energy levels are at their lowest, which is why it just doesn't make sense for us to be going out and trying to be productive and trying to get through our to-do lists. You might find that during the time of the new moon, your brain is a little bit foggy. That's really common. You don't have as much energy. You don't feel like really getting out of bed that much, or you're falling asleep earlier or staying in later. This is normal. If you don't know that this is what's happening, you might be inclined to think that there's something wrong with you and that you need to push a little bit harder to get up earlier or stay up later or whatever it is it may be, or do a stronger workout. But the time of the new moon is your permission slip to do none of that and just do what your body intuitively wants to do. Energy levels are at their lowest. When it comes to the archetype, the new moon is associated with the archetype of the crone. So the crone is also associated with death and with the elderly woman. And again, this is not an archetype that we embrace at all in our society. We love the maiden and we love the mother. We love the sensuality and the sexuality and the optimism and the joy and the vibrancy that goes with those archetypes. But when we go into the other darker archetypes, like the wild woman, which we'll look at the end, and the crone, there is no room for that woman in our society. And it is up to us as women to really carve out space for the crone. So the crone archetype is not so much concerned with outwardly experiences. It doesn't care that much about all the things that you've done and all the people who are in your lives and all the things that are on your to-do list. The crone asks of you to deepen your own connection to yourself and to your heart. It asks you to develop the richness of your own inner world and the richness and the vastness of your own spirit. Doesn't care that much about the external world. Again, new moon, it all, weaves with each other and it all connects. This is a new beginning. This is a time to dream, to manifest, to set intentions, to withdraw, and to reset. That's exactly what the crone archetype is asking of you. Forget about everyone else and just focus on yourself. What do you need at this very moment? These 3 days around the new moon, this is your permission slip to just do those things and make those commitments. The element associated with the new moon is the element of earth. And to me, this is very intuitive because if you think of earth, you think of the seed that is planted deep into the earth, deep into the soil. So the earth is the ground of our potential and our intentions. It is from the ground that everything new begins and emerges and finds life, but it can only find life and emerge if it first was deep, dark into the soil, into the earth. So it is the element of earth. The season is winter. And again, to me, this is also very intuitive because if you think of winter, I know for me, I'm in Ottawa, Canada, and it's snowing everywhere right now. And this is a symbol, a big symbol of the new moon energy. Things are dead. Plants are not alive. The leaves in the trees are not blossoming. Everything is kind of at a standstill deep into the earth, where it's going to regenerate itself, renew, reset with, a couple months of winter, and then it's going to be able to blossom once more come springtime. So the new moon is associated with the element of earth. The cardinal direction is north, and again, I think that's easy to remember because if you think of winter, if you go up north, it's colder, so just try to keep it in that direction. But if you're someone who likes to practice rituals from any like Celtic traditions or anything like that, or you do like earth-based ceremonies, if you were going to do a new moon ceremony, for example, you want to offer up something to the direction of north and to the great beings that protect the cardinal direction of north. Now, let's talk about the menstrual cycle. So lunaception, for those of you who might not be familiar with that term, lunaception just means it's the act of syncing up your yoga practice with the phases of the moon. Sorry, not your yoga practice. Lunaception is about syncing up your menstrual cycle with the phases of the moon. When I first heard that term, I thought this was absolutely crazy and I had no idea what people were talking about. And I didn't really understand why people wanted lunaception or what the benefits were. But basically, if we go back, hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years before we had so much technology and so much artificial light and even things like medications, which, let me just say, like all of these things that I've listed are amazing blessings. And I love our technology and I love our artificial light, and medication is great. However, before we had all of these things, a big source of light, especially in the nighttime, was the moon. It was the moonbeams, moon rays. So it was fairly common for women's menstrual cycles to just naturally be aligned with the lunar cycle. So the new moon would be the time of bleeding. And it absolutely is possible to, like, if, for example, your cycle is all over the place, or if you have a very difficult cycle, like heavy periods or really bad PMS and really terrible cramps, you might find it beneficial to read books like Lunaception and moon time, which kind of go deep down into the topic of how to sync up your menstrual cycle with the lunar cycle, because it has been shown to alleviate those kinds of symptoms of like heavy periods and cramps and bloating and like, you know, on a really painful way, or if it's just an irregular cycle. So if you were, for example, in line with the lunar cycle, the new moon is when you would be bleeding. And of course, this does make sense. If your energy levels are at their lowest and you are menstruating, this is not the time to be going out and trying to be social and trying to be doing a bunch of stuff. Your body is telling you to rest, to withdraw a little bit, and to focus on your own needs. And just like I said at the beginning of this call, nature's rhythms are our own rhythms. So the moon is going into the darkness. We are also going into the darkness. Our body is releasing the egg that was no longer fertilized, and we are in, you know, especially for those 3 days that are heavier in your cycle, those are usually the days around the new moon. Now, of course, don't feel bad if you're not in sync with the lunar phases. When I first introduced this principle, I got flooded with emails and messages from women who were really worried because their menstrual cycle was nowhere near in line with the lunar cycle. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't absolutely have to be in sync for everything to be okay. If you feel healthy and you feel okay, that is all that matters. If you are interested in learning more about this process of syncing them up, it's really simple. Again, I'll mention the resources. I believe it's Moon Time, My Moon Time, and Lunaceptions are 2 books. It's very simple. You basically just have to sleep in darkness throughout the month, except for the 3 days around the full moon. You want to either open your blinds to be able to see the moonbeams, or you want to have a little night light. But again, this is just like a brief overview, but if you are a woman and if you are menstruating, then the new moon might be the time where you actually are bleeding. And again, don't worry, for those of you who are in premenopause or menopause, or if you've had a hysterectomy, this is okay. You do not need a womb, you do not need a uterus to be able to benefit from these teachings and benefit from these lessons. So if you can just go with the attitude that for every new moon, you know that this is a time that your body needs a little bit of rest, whether or not you're on your period. It really doesn't matter. It's just like an extra layer of depth for those of you who are interested, but it doesn't matter. Don't get too hung up on it. So the new moon, a time to dream, to reset, to renew, and to set intentions. This is your new beginning. So following along, those of you in the workbook after the menstrual cycle, then it's the what is the best time to, or I think it says something like that in the workbook. So the new moon is the best time to rest. It is the best time to dream and to visualize and to set intentions for the future. This is when you want to quiet everything down and just ask yourself, what do I actually want? This is the best time to create a vision board. So I don't know if you guys have a vision board. I have one. I don't use it that much, but every now and then I do update it. So a vision board is just like a cork board, or you can even make it on Pinterest, where you just pin images that represent the life that you want and what you want for yourself. So the new moon is an excellent time to make a vision board and to really get clear on what it is that you want. It's also a great time to practice self-care practices. I like to take bubble baths around the time of the new moon, go to get a massage, get your nails done, or just do it at home if you're really not feeling like you want to be around other people, which is very common. But just like really nice nurturing, like doing a little facial or a nice long bubble bath is a really soothing activity that you can do around the time of the new moon. Now, the new moon, this is my favorite. The new moon is the best time to say no. The new moon is the time where you want to say no to the things you don't want to do. I feel like we've forgotten how to say no to things. We feel like we have to be polite. We feel like we have to say yes to every opportunity because we're worried that we're going to miss out on an opportunity. But again, this is just like society's expectations on us to always be productive, always be doing something, always be accomplishing our dreams and reaching our goals and go, 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 go. No, it doesn't work that way. You will burn out. Every month for 3 days, say no. No to your meetings, no appointments, reschedule things. Like for myself, I'm very lucky, obviously, like I work from home. So I do have the ability around the time of the new moon to not book any meetings for myself. Obviously, today's a new moon, I'm doing a webinar. I'm kind of going against my own teachings, but this was a good time for me to put this together. So I kind of wanted to make myself go out of that comfort zone. But normally those 3 days around the new moon, the days around where I'm bleeding, where I am really embodying the crone energies, I just say no to stuff and I try to clear out my calendar as much as possible. Now, I wasn't always working from home. I used to have a very normal government job, so I had to go into work every day. I couldn't just tell my boss, you know, oh, it's the new moon, I can't come in, clear my calendar. It didn't really work that way, unfortunately. So things that you can do if you are still in the workforce, and this is what I was doing, I would take my lunches by myself. I would, if it was summer or springtime, I would go take my lunch outside in nature. That was a really, really great way to reconnect, to reset and renew. But as much as possible, if you can, move your meetings, take a lunch by yourself. This is not the best time to socialize. Odds are you won't be the most pleasant person ever anyway. So you might want to make time for yourself. Okay, and now the last thing here, in terms of practices and rituals that are beneficial for the new moon. So if you want to get on your yoga mat, if you want to do some kind of form of a yoga practice, this is the best time to get really deep into your meditation practice. This is the time where you are going to get probably the most insight that you possibly could. This is also a great opportunity to get into yoga nidra or yogic sleep. Remember, we want to rest a lot during the time of the new moon. This is also a great opportunity to practice slower forms of yoga like yin yoga or restorative yoga. So some of you may or may not know, I know some of you know because you're already a part of the community, but I have a lunar yoga community for women, and together we do new moon and full moon yoga practices and rituals, and we have different offerings for the first quarter moon and the third quarter moon. But for example, for the new moon, we always do a yin yoga practice, a meditation, and a journaling exercise, always with the theme of setting the intention for the coming weeks. New moon is a time to tune everything out, get on your mat, move very slowly. This is just so not the time to be like sweating and working out and like worrying about losing weight or whatever it is that you normally worry about. Try to drop all of that for those 3 days of the new moon. Just take care for yourself. Do a little bit less and you will get a lot more. This is also the part that I feel people misunderstand, especially in our society, because we are always pushed to go, 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 produce, produce, produce. We worry about taking breaks and taking some time off. However, I can almost guarantee you that if you actually do start to take some time off for every new moon, you will end up being more productive during the first quarter moon and the full moon. And even year round, if you rest a little bit more during the winter season, you will be more productive during the spring and summertime. At least that has been my experience. So that pretty much covers the new moon. If you are following along with your workbook, you'll see that after that, there is a question that says, what does this mean to me? And this, guys, is super important. I need you guys to really start asking yourself. I've told you what I like to do on the new moon, but what I do doesn't necessarily have to do with what you do. So I want you to make some kind of commitment of what you are going to do from now on every new moon to make sure that you are taking time for yourself, you are resetting, you are renewing, and you are taking the time to set intentions for the coming weeks, the coming months, and even the coming year. So write that down, make a commitment, and just make it clear. You don't have to do it right now, but I really want this to be something practical that you can take back into your day-to-day lives. Okay, let me take a sip of my tea. All right, so after we've moved away from the new moon, pretty much exactly 1 week after that, it's usually like a 6 to 8 day period, but most of the time it's exactly 1 week after we enter the first quarter moon. So the first quarter moon is if the new moon is our seed planted in the soil. The first quarter moon is that first little twig, that first little bud that starts to come out of the soil, the emergence, right? So sorry, I'm just going to minimize this. It was distracting. So the theme of the first quarter moon is to take action. We are no longer in the darkness. We are starting to see the light and we want to seize it. So the words associated with the first quarter moon are play, begin, commit, risk, intuit, feel, and just do it. Basically, that's what the first quarter moon is all about. It is all about taking action and going forward. You've spent the 3 days in the new moon getting really quiet with yourself and asking, what do I want? What is my intention? What do I want in my life? What do I want for myself? Now it's the first quarter moon and it's time to start actually acting on those things that you said you were going to do and that you said you wanted. It's one thing, you know, all this talk of like manifesting and stuff, and I'm all about that kind of stuff. but you can't just think it. Like, you actually need to move forward, and you might not know exactly what you need to do in order to accomplish the goals that you have and in order to feel the way that you want to feel. But I feel like as long as you are in action and you are doing something, the universe is going to give you what you need. So the first quarter moon is all about taking some risk, being a little bit playful, and committing to something and taking action. So the energy levels are starting to rise. The energy levels are the lowest in the new moon, and then towards the first quarter moon, we start to feel a little bit better. So energy levels rise a little bit more, so we have a little bit more momentum. We feel better in our bodies, so it makes more sense that we would start to, you know, plan things on our calendar, say yes to a little bit more things, and really start to feel optimistic and excited about our future and about our lives. Now, the archetype of the first quarter moon is the maiden. And I mean, it's not complicated. If you just imagine a maiden in your mind, you can pretty much understand what this archetype represents. So the maiden is the young woman who is completely free. She is not attached. She doesn't have any kind of like attachments that tie her down. She is very naive, but this allows her to take risks. She sees everything through rose-colored glasses. She is optimistic, she is joyful, and she pretty much says yes to everything because she is excited and she has that vibrancy that comes with youth. So what's important about these archetypes is that they don't actually represent the stage that you're at in life. So whether you're 65 or whether you're 25, you represent all four of these archetypes within you throughout different times of the month. One archetype might be a little bit more dominant based on which age you're actually in. So I'm, you know, I don't have children and I'm 27, so I'm still in the maiden archetype. But that doesn't mean I can't access the crone or the wild woman or the mother. We still have access to all of them, but one might be a little bit more dominant within you. And this is all great, you know, it balances out throughout your life as you get older. But now, so the maiden is the archetype associated with this, and I think it makes sense that the element associated with the first quarter moon is the element of air. So if you think of air, those of you who follow me on YouTube, you know that I recently just did a elemental series. So I did a yoga practice for the element of earth, air, fire, and water. If you really want to learn more about the elements and how to embody them and what they mean to you, I definitely recommend doing those classes. So for the element of air, for example, this is all about creativity. This is all about breath and connecting to others. This is all about being, taking action. I mean, if you think of the element of air, it's really playful, it's really fun, and it's uninhibited and wild and free, and it goes wherever it wants to, which is why the first quarter moon is such a fun time of the month, and it's really meant to be embraced. It's associated with the season of spring or with the spring equinox. So if you think of spring, that makes sense as well, right? Things are starting to bloom, bears are coming out of hibernation, and animals are coming back out. Everything is slowly coming back to life. And because hopefully we took the time during the new moon to really be conscious of what we wanted, this new life that we're bringing forward is a new life that has meaning, that has depth, that is really truly in line with what we want in life, right? So it's all about like taking control, empowering ourselves to move in the direction that we want to move instead of just being the victim and letting life push us around. So the cardinal direction associated with the first quarter moon is east, and the menstrual phase is pre-ovulation. So right before ovulation, this is pretty much like the time of the month where most women, pre-ovulation to ovulation is usually when most women feel their best in their bodies. The hormones are starting to kind of level out, and you feel beautiful, right? You feel beautiful, you feel great, you feel vibrant, everything is going your way. This is a great time. So the first quarter moon is the time to start projects. If you have a product to launch it on the first quarter moon. The first quarter moon, what I usually like to do, this is when I fill out my calendar. So when I commit to meetings, when I plan out my activities, when I schedule everything, and I really commit to things. This is also the perfect time to step out of your comfort zone and do things that you normally wouldn't do. Remember, like the maiden, this energy that she embodies is really naive. She doesn't really care that much about consequences because she thinks everything is rosy, everything is beautiful, and she focuses on the positive side of things as opposed to what could go wrong and the pessimistic negative side of things. So you want to make the most of that energy. If there's something that you want to risk, now is the time to do it. If there's something you need to launch, now's the time to launch it. This is also a really great time to follow your gut. Your intuition is really strong at this time. And again, this ties back to the element of air, which is all about intuition and the connection to yourself, as well as the connection, your spiritual connection and the connection to the universe and the people around you. So this is the best time to follow your gut, step out of your comfort zone, start projects, plan out your calendar, and launch things. In terms of your yoga practices and rituals, this is the time I usually would like to do like a slow flow or an more energetic vinyasa flow class, whatever feels good to you. But if you really want to embody the first quarter moon energy, I would encourage people to try something that they've never tried before. So try a brand new style of yoga or just a brand new style of exercise and fitness and movement in general. So for example, for me, usually around the first quarter moon, I try to make sure that I always go and take like a pole dancing class, you know, something wild that I don't really do very often or all of the time, but it kind of gets me into that maiden energy where you feel really good about yourself and it's different, you know, why not risk it? Because during that time, it's like nothing can go wrong. So just try something new, something you've never done before. Any kind of movement that makes you feel really good in your skin is a really great thing to do for the first quarter moon. Okay. Sorry, I got a little bing message. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't any problem. All right, so that is the first quarter moon. Now, just like there was 1 week between the new moon and the first quarter moon, there is 1 week between the first quarter moon and the full moon. Again, it's roughly, sometimes it's like 5 days, sometimes like 8 days, but it's usually about 7. So we started in the new moon in the deep darkness in the soil, and now we've moved and we've started to emerge. Energy levels are rising in the first quarter moon. There's a bit more light in the sky. We're starting to feel better. And now we are at the full moon, and this is the peak. So the full moon is when you look in the sky and you see the moon is bright. I mean, unless it's cloudy or you pretty much can see the moon in the sky. Again, I often can't see it due to cloudiness here in Ottawa, but when you can see it, oh my goodness, best thing you can do is go outside and moonbathe and just look at it for a couple minutes. It's such a wonderful time of the month. So the full moon, the theme is celebration, and it is a celebration. I mean, if you just look at the moon, it's gonna fill you up with this positive energy, and you're just gonna, it's like it's replenishing you and recharging your juices and making you so alive and ready for play and ready for celebration. So the words associated with the full moon are words like harvest. You've probably heard the full moon sometimes called the harvest moon. That's another word that people sometimes interchange with it. And I should mention also for the first quarter moon, sometimes people call this the waxing moon. So from the new moon, the moon waxes and then it starts to wane after the full moon. So from the full moon, other words that are associated with it are connection, play, and forgiveness. This is an aspect of the full moon that some people tend to overlook, but to me it's quite important. Full moon, we also want to start thinking about letting go. We'll do a lot of that in the third quarter moon, but full moon is also like, okay, what am I celebrating? And anything else that's not really worth celebrating, I'm just going to drop it because it's not worthy of my attention. The energy is at its highest. So full moon usually is like when you feel the best, when you're the most alive. A lot of people have a hard time sleeping in the full moon. So this doesn't happen to me. I kind of sleep all the time. But if you find that you are restless at night for a couple nights in a row, or you only sleep a couple hours, whereas normally you have a full night's rest, you might find out that it was actually a time of the full moon. This is very, very common. Even in people who have no idea about the lunar cycles, like men and women can be affected in this way. So you might not be sleeping as much, but you probably don't feel that bad about it because you're just so energized and just ready to go. You're like a little energizer bunny, which is great. You want to make the most of that time where you actually feel amazing and can get things done. Remember, it's like our society wants us to stay in this full moon, summer, mother energy year round, but it doesn't work. It's not sustainable. But when you are in that full moon energy, make the most of it. Celebrate, go out, be with your friends, do something fun, be productive, get all the things out of your to-do list. Just go. You have the energy for it. So the archetype, I mentioned it briefly, but the archetype associated with the full moon is the mother archetype. So the mother, just think of it, she is fertile, right? She is nurturing, she is loving, she is sensual, in touch with her sexuality, and she loves to be around others. She loves to love others and be loved by them. So this is a beautiful archetype to embody, which is why I usually encourage people around the time of the full moon to gather with other women. Now, the element associated with the full moon, I think this also makes a lot of sense. It's the element of fire. So the full moon, you're probably fired up, ready to go. You have all these heats that you can burn through. So element of fire is a great one to go through. And I would encourage you to really try around the time of the full moon, try out my fire practice that I have on YouTube. So it probably makes sense, but of course it's associated with the season of summer. So if we go back to our little flower, we started as a seed in the new moon, the little bud emerged in the springtime, the first quarter moon, and the maiden archetype, and now the flower is blossoming. It has reached its full potential. This is really what the full moon represents, the reaching of the full potential. All the hard work is done. You now get to harvest and reap the fruits of your labor, the hard labor that you did in the new moon, the first quarter moon, and all the moons that have passed before then, the months, the years, the decades that have passed before then. The full moon is your opportunity to look at this big, beautiful flower that you've created, this flower that is you, that is your life, and you get to celebrate it and really, truly honor it. It is associated with the cardinal direction of south. And again, if you think fire and summer, it's all hot. It's hot down south. And this is probably a really stupid way to remember it, but it works for me. That's how I remember the associations of the cardinal directions and the elements and all of that stuff. To me, it's intuitive. So south, hot. That is what you want to keep in mind. And then for your menstrual cycle, if you were synced up with the lunar cycle, this would be the time that you are ovulating. And again, we are embodying the mother archetype. So the mother is fertile. She wants to give birth not only to people and babies, but she also gives birth to ideas, to plans. She manifests. So you've spent all your time in your new moon trying to think and visualize and set intentions on what you want. And then the mother archetype, the full moon, is full of these, of the potential that's realized, right? So it actually happens at the time of the full moon. So this is the time where you are ovulating. You are just ripe and juicy. And this is also why it's the best time to make love and to connect with other people. So let's go to that next section, the best time to. This is the best time to go out, have fun, get together with your girlfriends, go see your family members. It's kind of harder to get into conflict. Like you might just feel really good in your body. So make the most of it. This is, like I said, this is usually the best time to be intimate with your partner and be romantic. Your body is really receptive to it. I mean, this is usually sometimes when you're ovulating, so be mindful of that. This is also a great time to make art and create. So if you are an artist, this is a time you can get your paintings out, color, whatever it is, just have fun, be playful, just celebrate. In terms of our practices, yoga practices and rituals that you can do, to me, this is when I like to get my really sweaty workouts in. So a really vigorous vinyasa flow. I'm not huge into vinyasa flow like vigorously for the last 2 years. So for example, oh, I forgot to mention that. I'll mention that after. But I still like to practice mostly slower flows, but I might go for like an extra long walk and make sure that I get plenty of time outdoors. But if you are someone that likes like power yoga and strong vinyasa flow practices, this is the time to do it. This is also a great time to dance and just do whatever feels good in your bodies. So in lunar yoga, we always celebrate the full moon with a slow flow yoga class that is all focused on celebrating, harvesting, and letting go of what no longer serves you. And we also have a journaling exercise as well as the meditation so that we can really reflect and look back at all of the amazing things that we've accomplished. I forgot to mention, so the first quarter moon, if we rewind by 1 week, when the energy levels start to rise in our lunar yoga community for the first quarter moon, we always have a guest speaker interview because the first quarter moon is probably one of the best times of the month that you can get inspired. So other things that you can do is like read a new book or listen to some podcast, listen to music that makes you feel alive. And this is why we have a guest speaker interview, because it gets to like really nourish our creativity and our inspiration, the element of air, the maiden that is optimistic and joyful. So it really taps into that energy. And then full moon, we have a flow. Okay. After the full moon, we then go into the descent. So we've spent all our time going up. It is now time to go back down so that we can renew and commence the circle again. This is always a circle. The last phase that we're going to look at is the third quarter moon. And just like the other ones, it happens roughly 1 week after the full moon. This is a moon I think is quite undervalued and misunderstood, greatly misunderstood. So the theme of the third quarter moon, what it's trying to teach us is to release. This is about expelling, releasing, letting go, clearing out. Those are all words, by the way, that are associated with the third quarter moon. So letting go, express, so expressing yourself, and you start to tune in. So we have 4 main moon phases, and 2 and 2 go together. So the new moon and the third quarter moon go together. They both represent the downward energy, the descent, the turning in, whereas the first quarter moon and the full moon represent the going out into the world, the joy, the energy that rises and everything, the productivity. And then third quarter moon, after the full moon, we start to wind it down. So words like letting go, expressing, tuning in, releasing, dropping, quitting, these are all words that are associated with the third quarter moon. In terms of the energy, your energy starts to go down. So you were at your peak at the full moon, and now it's time to start going down after you go to and then you'll go to your lowest point at the new moon. So you might notice that you have some energy, but it's definitely not as high as it was during the time of the full moon. The archetype. Now, I love this archetype. This is the wild woman, or sometimes called the wise wild woman. The wild woman is the part of ourselves that society definitely does not want us to embody and represent. The wild woman is the woman who said, the status quo is not okay. I am not okay with what you're doing to me. I'm not okay with this situation. She is angry. She is moody. She is emotional. She knows what she wants. She values herself, and she's not afraid to speak up about it. And most women in our society are raised to be polite girls, to be kind, to be nice. And I mean, those are all such amazing virtues and amazing qualities, but they have their time and their place. Anger, being pissed off, being upset, being sad, being depressed, those also have their place. You don't always have to be polite if someone is stepping on your toes. If someone is doing something to you that is not okay, the wild woman is the one that steps in and asserts her dominance and asserts her value and her self-esteem and clearly reinforces her boundaries. She is the parts of ourselves that is just totally untamable. The one that does things in the spur of the moment, the one that is really inspired, the one that all of a sudden decides to color her hair or chop it all off or do something drastic. She's unpredictable, and she's often very scary, even for us women, because it's the unfamiliar, uncharted territory, and it represents everything that we've been told not to be as women. It is such a powerful archetype to work with, but it's one that you can't really control, and that's why it gets a little bit scary, because when you really unleash the wild woman, you don't know where your life's going to take you. So it's one to take with a little grain of salt and kind of ease your way into it, but it is so fierce. If there is something that needs to change in your life, the wild woman is the one that's going to actually make those changes happen, and she holds, no prisoners and no hostages, like has no mercy. She just does it. If you are already in my lunar yoga community, last month we talked a lot about the goddesses. So like the goddess Kali, I think, is like the wild woman. She's like the destroyer, and she does it all for your greater good. So it's not destruction for the sake of being mean and just for the sake of watching things burn, but it's truly the wild woman wants to set boundaries because she has your best interest at heart. So that is the archetype for the third quarter moon. If you think about that, wild and emotional and angry, the element associated is the element of water. If you've done my water yoga class on YouTube, you know that the water is associated with our second chakra. This is all about our feeling body. This is all about our intuition, or not our intuition, sorry, about our emotions and the way that we feel, and really getting connected deep down to the way that we feel. Water is the water of our tears. It's the water of our blood. It's the water of our bodies that needs to move, that needs to be expressed and let out. It's associated with the season of fall. So when the leaves start to fall out of the trees and we go back into the descent, back into the darkness, and the cardinal direction is west. Now this one is also, there's like a little trick to remember it. So wild woman, water, west, they all start with a W. That's just, again, how I remember it, but cardinal direction, west. Now, you can probably guess what stage in the menstrual cycle the third quarter moon is at. It's PMS, it's premenstrual cycle, premenstrual phase, right? So before your body is able to actually, like before you bleed, you enter the PMS phase. I mean, any woman who's had that, some people feel nothing and there's not that much fluctuation. For others, the couple days before your period is pretty drastic and, you know, is characterized with a lot of mood swings. Wherever you are on that spectrum, intuitively, you probably notice that there are some changes in your emotional body, in the way that you feel, in the way that you conduct yourself. And it makes sense. If you think of when you're PMSing, you can be a little bit crabby. You can be a little bit sad. I know for me, I get so emotional. I just cry. I don't get angry. I just get sad. And that's okay. I've really had to learn to let that be okay and even find vehicles to let this be expressed. So this is how you get to really work with the moon phases. Is like, okay, I've learned this, but what am I going to do about it? So for me, I know that for every third quarter moon, I like to put on a really sad TV show and I just let myself cry because I'm super emotional. And this is a really great way for me to just like let out, clear out the trauma that's lingering, clear out whatever junk I've accumulated, and just give it a safe space to be expressed. So premenstrual phase for sure is the third quarter moon. So in your yoga practice, or sorry, not in your yoga practice, but just in life, the third quarter moon would be the best time to set some boundaries. Now, you need to be careful in this time because you're probably going to be tempted to speak everything that's on your mind. You know, like if tensions have been difficult with a certain family member or a friend, for example, the wild woman, the third quarter moon energy is going to make you want to stand up for yourself and tell that other person, you know, what you really think about them and go down this route. So you really need to practice some discernment, I should say, so that you don't go overboard, because sometimes the moodier that you are, sometimes it can cloud your judgment. So you do need to use a little bit of discernment, but absolutely, this is a great time for you to get clear on what you want and what you do not want anymore and what you will not tolerate anymore. So to set boundaries, this is also a great time. This is my favorite time to clean the house, when you want to get rid of stuff that no longer serves you. So when we say things in a yoga practice like, let go of what no longer serves you, we're usually talking about mental thoughts, behaviors, routines, but it can also definitely be physical. I like to clear out my closet. I like to clean the house. I like to get rid of junk that I've accumulated. All of a sudden, it's like in the third quarter moon, it's like you're so sensitive to everything around you that if something is not in line with what you want and what you feel at that moment, you don't want it in your sight. So this is a great time to do all those things that you normally, I normally don't want to do, like clean the house. Third quarter moon, that's the time to do it. It's also a great time to quit stuff. So you're probably going to notice around this time of the month, this is where you say, you know what, enough's enough. I've given it my best shot. This is no longer serving me. This is not productive for me. I don't want to do this anymore. My boundary has been crossed. I quit. This is the perfect time to do this, right? So in the full moon and as a maiden, we're saying yes, yes, yes to everything. In the third quarter moon, we're starting to let go of things. And then in the new moon, where new opportunities arise, we can say no. So we just tune in. In terms of your yoga practice, the third quarter moon is a really great time, in my opinion, to practice pranayama, so breathing exercises, especially breathing exercises like breath of fire or Kapalabhati, things that really get the, the fires within you going and that help you clear out the mental cobwebs, which is what like the skull shining breath actually does, Kapalabhati. It's like a clearing out the cobwebs in your mind. It's also an amazing time to journal. This is when you want to get your journal out and you just want to like let your pen move on the page without taking your hand off of the page. Just like a word vomit, you just get it all out there so that you can give yourself a vehicle to express all of those emotions that are cooped up within you and that need their opportunity to get out on the mat. So expressing yourself and journaling are super important. This is why in our lunar yoga community for the third quarter moon, we always have a live group call, because I want to give people an opportunity to just get things off of your chest. Now, normally those calls are pretty positive because we have some really happy members. It seems everyone's been so happy and like giggly and stuff, but really all emotions are acceptable. So third quarter moon, I would say, is not necessarily the time to gather with a huge group, but if you have like a trusted partner or a trusted friend, then I would let myself, express yourself and just let them know what's on your mind. If you don't have anyone or you just don't feel like being around anyone, journaling is a great way to get all of that out. So if you are going through your workbook, I want you to really think of everything that we've covered from the new moon, first quarter, full moon, and third quarter, and start thinking, what does this mean to me? Given what we've learned, what we've covered throughout this last, I don't know how long, at least half hour, time is going fast. What does this mean to you? And what steps are you actually prepared to start taking in your day-to-day life, in your lifestyle, so that you can actually start to sync up your life and your yoga practice with the lunar cycles? And really think about it, mull it over and write it down. Make some kind of little commitments. Okay, I would like to thank each and every single one of you beautiful yogis and yoginis, male and female, everyone from around the world tuning in different spots and different time zones. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy lives to do this webinar with me. I do hope that you found it insightful, inspirational, that you learned a little bit. And just like I mentioned at the beginning of this, take it with a grain of salt. Some things are going to work with you. They're going to feel intuitively true to you. Others, you might find it's not a good fit for you, and that's okay. Just leave it out. Now, I've mentioned my Lunar Yoga community a few times throughout this webinar, and I would like to invite you. My Lunar Yoga community is for women. It's an online program that you can join at any time. If you are interested in trying it out for yourself, I, of course, welcome you with open arms. If you use the coupon code NEWSTUDENT when you're signing up, you'll be able to sign up for the first month half off, or you can sign up for the year and get 35% off. So new student will get you a discount. This will be valid for a couple more weeks, I believe. But please, at any point, if you want to reach out to me, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can go to the Lunar Yoga website. It's just lunaryoga.tv, or you can reach me at my personal website, which is yogawithkassandra.com. Thank you again just so very much for tuning in. I hope that this somewhat answered the questions that you had about the lunar phases, and I really hope that you feel empowered to really make some lifestyle changes and some changes in your yoga practice so that you can also feel a little bit more connected to your divine feminine energy, to your spirituality, and also to yourself. Really, this is all about connecting to the self and finding true health and well-being. So that is all for now. Thank you so very much, yogis. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste.